The morning sky over New Dakota turned black as shadows fell across the colonial settlement. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defense Center and watched as alien ships blotted out the sun. There were so many vessels that counting them seemed pointless. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived exactly as intelligence reports had warned they would. Lisa Hayes rushed into the command room behind him, and her boots echoed against the metal floor. She carried a data pad filled with evacuation reports, and her face showed the stress of the past few days. "Jake, the civilian transports are only half loaded. We need more time." Morrison turned away from the window and looked at the holographic display showing enemy positions. Red dots covered the screen like a disease spreading across healthy tissue. "How much time do we have before they make contact?" "Our communications officer says they're hailing us now." "Should I put them through?" Morrison nodded and walked to the center console. The other defense personnel gathered around him, and their faces showed mixtures of fear and determination. These were miners and farmers who had volunteered to protect their homes. They were not soldiers, but they were all they had. The holographic projector hummed to life and created a three-dimensional image of an alien figure. General Vexthor stood nearly 8 feet tall with gray-scaled skin and golden eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. His uniform bore symbols of rank that glittered under artificial lighting. Behind him stood rows of Zephyrian warriors in perfect formation. "I am General Vexthor of the Zephyrian Empire. You will identify yourself human." Morrison stepped forward and kept his voice steady. "Commander Jake Morrison, Colonial Defense Coordinator for New Dakota." The alien general studied Morrison with obvious contempt. His mouth twisted into what might have been a smile, but showed too many sharp teeth to be friendly. "Commander Morrison, your reputation precedes you. The defender of Europa Station. The man who held out for 6 months against impossible odds, Monaco. That was a long time ago." "Indeed. But today you face not pirates or raiders. Today you face the full might of the Zephyrian Empire." Vexthor gestured to the formations behind him. "I have 1 million soldiers under my command. Each one trained from birth for warfare. Each one willing to die for the Empire." Morrison looked directly into those burning golden eyes and felt the weight of every person depending on him. The miners who had families to protect, the farmers who had built lives on this world, the children who deserved to grow up free. "Good," Morrison said quietly. "I have 1 million targets." The silence that followed stretched like a held breath. Several Zephyrian officers behind Vexthor shifted uncomfortably, but their general remained motionless. His golden eyes narrowed as he processed what the human had said. "You mock me, human. You have perhaps 1,000 defenders. My scouts have counted your positions. Your scouts saw what I wanted them to see." Vexthor leaned closer to the projector, and his image flickered slightly. "You cannot seriously believe you can defeat my forces. We have conquered dozens of worlds. Entire civilizations have fallen before us." Morrison crossed his arms and maintained eye contact with the alien commander. "Those civilizations made the mistake of fighting you the way you expected to be fought. They lined up their armies and met you in open battle. They played your game by your rules, and you will not. I'm not that stupid." The alien general drew himself up to his full imposing height. "Then you choose death over surrender. Very well. I offer you 48 hours to evacuate your civilians. After that time expires, any human remaining on this world will be considered a combatant and dealt with accordingly." "Generous of you." "I am not without mercy, Commander Morrison. Your reputation suggests you are a warrior of honor. I would prefer not to waste time hunting down non-combatants." Morrison glanced at Lisa Hayes, who nodded slightly. "The evacuation transports could use every extra hour they could get. 48 hours, then. When that time expires, my forces will land and secure this world for the Empire. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. I'm counting on it." Vexthor's expression shifted to one of confusion. "You speak strangely for a man facing certain death. Maybe that's because I'm not facing certain death. Maybe you are." The alien general's composure cracked slightly and anger flashed in his golden eyes. "Explain yourself, human." Morrison smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "You have 1 million soldiers. That's your strength and your weakness. Every one of those soldiers needs food, water, ammunition, and orders. Everyone represents a supply line that can be cut. Everyone is a target that can be eliminated. Everyone is a point of failure in your perfect military machine." My forces are disciplined and coordinated. They move as one mind controlling many bodies. That's exactly the problem, General. One mind. What happens when that mind gets confused? When it receives contradictory information? When it has to make decisions faster than it can process data? Vexthor straightened and his voice took on a colder tone. You will learn the futility of such tactics soon enough. 48 hours, Commander Morrison. Use them wisely. The holographic image flickered and disappeared. The command center fell silent except for the quiet humming of electronic equipment. Lisa Hayes looked at Morrison with a mixture of admiration and concern. Jake, do you really have a plan, or are you just buying time? Morrison walked back to the window and looked up at the alien fleet. Thousands of ships hung in the sky like mechanical storm clouds. Each one probably carried hundreds of warriors equipped with advanced weapons and armor. The math was simple and terrifying. Both, he said finally. Get me Alex Carter and his special operations team. And find Dr. Stone. We're going to need every advantage we can manufacture. What about the evacuations? Continue them, but quietly. I want Vexthor to think we're just buying time for civilians. Let him believe we're planning a conventional defense. Hayes nodded and headed for the communications panel. Morrison remained at the window and watched alien shuttles beginning to descend through the atmosphere. They moved in perfect formation like mechanical birds of prey. Each shuttle probably carried 50 soldiers. The numbers were overwhelming, but numbers were not everything. Morrison had learned that lesson on Europa Station, when he held off 3,000 pirates with only 200 defenders. He had learned it again during the mining wars when small groups of determined humans had outfought larger and better equipped forces. The key was not to fight the enemy's strength. The key was to make their strength into a weakness. 1,000,000 soldiers meant 1,000,000 targets. It also meant 1,000,000 mouths to feed, 1,000,000 weapons to maintain, and 1,000,000 individual decisions that had to be coordinated. Morrison smiled grimly as he watched more shuttles descending. Vexthor was about to learn why humans had earned their reputation as the most adaptable and unpredictable species in known space. The 48-hour countdown had begun. The command center buzzed with activity as Morrison gathered his core team around the central holographic display. Alex Carter arrived first, his special operations unit filing in behind him like shadows. These men and women had trained for situations exactly like this one, though none had ever faced odds quite so impossible. Dr. Emma Stone hurried in next, her lab coat stained with grease and chemical burns from working through the night. She carried a tablet loaded with weapon schematics, and her eyes showed the determined gleam of someone who refused to accept defeat. Lisa Hayes stood beside Morrison and studied the tactical display showing Zephyrian positions. Red markers indicated landing zones where alien forces were establishing forward bases. The pattern was textbook military doctrine, predictable and methodical. Tell me about Europa Station, Hayes said quietly. How did you hold out so long against those odds? Morrison touched the display and zoomed in on the colonial settlement. Buildings, mining equipment, and underground tunnels appeared in detailed three-dimensional models. Europa was different. We were defending a space station with limited access points. Here we have an entire planet. That sounds like a disadvantage. It is if you think like a conventional military commander, but if you think like a guerrilla fighter, it becomes an advantage. Morrison highlighted several key locations on the map. The pirates at Europa expected us to defend the main docking bays. Instead, we let them land and then cut off their escape routes. Carter leaned forward and studied the display. You want to let them establish positions? I want them to spread out. 1,000,000 soldiers sounds impressive until you realize they have to cover an entire planet. That means they'll be stretched thin everywhere. Dr. Stone looked up from her tablet. I've been working on converting our mining equipment into defensive systems. The excavation charges can be modified into proximity mines. The ore haulers can carry improvised explosives. What about weapons? The mining lasers are too slow for combat, but I can modify the power cores to create electromagnetic pulse devices. They won't destroy alien equipment, but they might disable it temporarily. Morrison nodded and turned to Carter. What's the status of your team? 64 operators ready for action. We've been training in the tunnel systems for the past 6 months. We know every passage, every access point, every emergency exit. Good, I need you to start preparing cache points throughout the colony. Food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. Nothing large enough to be detected by orbital scans. Hayes frowned as she studied the enemy positions. Jake, their pattern suggests they're planning a systematic advance from multiple directions. They'll converge on the main settlement and crush any resistance. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I don't understand. Morrison highlighted the alien landing zones again. Look at their formation. Perfect spacing, textbook coordination, predictable movement patterns. They're fighting the last war, not this one. Explain. Every species they've conquered probably tried to meet them in open battle. Line up armies, establish defensive positions, fight for territory. The Zephyrians developed tactics to counter that approach. Carter smiled grimly. But we're not going to fight for territory. Exactly. We're going to fight for time, confusion, and casualties. Every Zephyrian soldier who gets killed or wounded is one less they can use against us. Every supply convoy we destroy is resources they can't replace easily. Dr. Stone pulled up a schematic on her tablet. I've been studying their equipment signatures from the orbital scans. Their armor and weapons generate distinctive energy patterns. We might be able to track individual soldiers. How? The mining sensors we use to locate ore deposits can be recalibrated to detect those energy signatures. We'll know where they are before they know where we are. Morrison felt the first real spark of hope since the alien fleet had arrived. How long do you need to set that up? 12 hours for the sensor network. Another 6 to establish communication links between detection points. Do it. Alex, I need your people to start moving through the tunnel systems. Map every possible ambush point, every escape route, every choke point where we can hurt them. Carter nodded. What about the civilians who are staying behind? Morrison had been dreading this question. Despite the evacuation order, nearly 300 colonists had refused to leave their homes. Farmers, miners, shopkeepers, and their families who would rather fight than abandon everything they had built. They'll be our eyes and ears. Most of them know this territory better than we do. They can spot movement, report enemy positions, and blend in with the population. Hayes looked uncomfortable. Jake, using civilians as spotters puts them at enormous risk. Everything puts them at enormous risk now. At least this way they're contributing to their own defense instead of just hiding and hoping the Zephyrians don't take prisoners. Then we make sure they never get the chance to capture anyone. Dr. Stone saved her schematics and looked up at the group. There's something else. I've been analyzing their communication intercepts. The Zephyrians use a centralized command structure. Every unit reports to a higher authority which reports to the next level up. Standard military hierarchy. Yes, but taken to an extreme. Individual soldiers seem to have very little autonomy. They wait for orders before taking action. Morrison saw the implications immediately, which means if we can disrupt their communications, their forces become less coordinated. Maybe even paralyzed in some situations, Carter grinned. I like where this is going. Morrison pulled up a new display showing the colony's communication infrastructure. Power lines, data networks, and sensor arrays formed a complex web throughout the settlement. We're going to turn our own infrastructure into a weapon. Every power grid, every communication relay, every sensor array becomes a potential trap or weapon platform. How? Dr. Stone will modify the power systems to deliver overload surges on command. We'll rig communication towers to explode when triggered remotely. The sensor networks will feed false information to any alien equipment that tries to interface with them. Hayes was beginning to understand the scope of Morrison's plan. You're turning the entire colony into one giant booby trap. Not just the colony. The entire planet becomes hostile territory for them. Every building they enter might be rigged. Every piece of equipment they try to use might be compromised. Every road they travel might be mined. Dr. Stone nodded enthusiastically. The psychological effect will be as important as the physical damage. They'll become afraid to touch anything, go anywhere, trust any information. Carter stood up and adjusted his equipment harness. My team can start placing charges tonight. We'll use the mining tunnels to move undetected. Remember, the goal isn't to stop their advance. The goal is to make every meter they gain cost them more than they can afford to lose. Morrison looked around at his small team and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. These people were about to attempt something that military textbooks would call impossible. They were going to fight a technologically superior force with 10 times their numbers using nothing but ingenuity and determination. Any questions? Hayes raised her hand. What happens if this doesn't work? Morrison smiled grimly. Then we improvise. That's what humans do best. The team dispersed to begin their preparations and Morrison remained alone with the tactical display. 47 hours remained until the Zephyrian ultimatum expired. 47 hours to turn a peaceful mining colony into a nightmare for any invading force. He touched the display and watched enemy markers moving into position. Soon those red dots would represent individual soldiers moving through his carefully prepared killing ground, each one a target in his million-target strategy. The countdown continued. The ground shook as Zephyrian dropships descended through the morning atmosphere like mechanical thunder. Morrison watched from his hidden observation post as the first wave of alien soldiers poured out of their transports in perfect formation. Exactly as he had predicted, they moved in organized columns toward the main settlement. General Vexthor had kept his word about the 48-hour deadline. At precisely the agreed time, his forces began their assault on New Dakota. The alien general clearly expected this to be a brief and decisive victory. Lisa Hayes crouched beside Morrison in the concealed bunker and whispered into her communication device. "All units hold position. Let them advance into the kill zone." Through his binoculars, Morrison counted the advancing Zephyrian soldiers. They wore advanced combat armor that gleamed silver in the sunlight and carried energy weapons that hummed with contained power. Each soldier moved with disciplined precision, maintaining exact spacing and formation integrity. "They're beautiful in a way," Hayes murmured, "like a perfectly choreographed dance." "Beautiful and predictable," Morrison replied. "Watch how they respond to obstacles." As if summoned by his words, the lead Zephyrian unit encountered their first challenge. A damaged mining vehicle blocked the main road leading into town. The alien soldiers stopped in perfect unison and waited while their squad leader examined the obstacle. Morrison smiled grimly. 30 seconds to make a decision about a simple roadblock. Their training emphasizes following procedure over independent thinking. The Zephyrian squad leader finally gave orders, and his soldiers moved to push the mining vehicle aside. As soon as they touched it, the hidden explosive charges detonated. The blast sent 3 alien soldiers flying and created a crater where the road had been, but the explosion was only the beginning. As the remaining Zephyrians scattered to find cover, they triggered the secondary traps Morrison's team had carefully placed. Pressure plates activated mining charges buried beneath fake debris. Motion sensors triggered automated turrets disguised as survey equipment. "First blood to us," Hayes reported as she watched alien soldiers diving for cover, "but they're adapting quickly." Morrison nodded as he observed the Zephyrian response. The surviving soldiers immediately established defensive positions and began calling for support. Within minutes, aerial drones appeared overhead and started scanning for hidden threats. "Time to move," Morrison said. "Alex, begin Phase 2. Carter's voice crackled through the communication system. "Copy that." Initiating harassment protocols. Throughout the colony, small teams of human defenders emerged from concealed positions and attacked the alien flanks. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and then disappearing back into the tunnel systems before the Zephyrians could respond effectively. Morrison watched as confusion spread through the alien ranks. These soldiers had been trained to fight conventional battles against organized armies. They knew how to assault defensive positions and overwhelm enemy formations. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to stay in one place long enough to be targeted. Dr. Stone's voice came through the radio. "Sensor network is tracking movement patterns. The aliens are clustering around their landing zones instead of advancing." "They're scared," Hayes observed with satisfaction. "They don't know where the next attack will come from." Morrison studied the tactical display on his portable screen. Red markers showed Zephyrian positions while blue dots represented human defenders. The pattern looked like a swarm of insects harassing a much larger predator. "Jake, we've got incoming reinforcements," Carter reported. 3 more dropships heading for landing zone Alpha. Let them land. Dr. Stone, activate the power grid trap." "Activating now." The Zephyrian reinforcements landed exactly where Morrison had hoped they would. As their ships touched down on the designated landing pad, hidden power cables beneath the surface delivered a massive electrical surge. The alien vessel's systems overloaded and shut down, stranding their crews on the ground. Morrison watched through his binoculars as Zephyrian soldiers poured out of their disabled ships and immediately came under fire from concealed human positions. The aliens took cover behind their grounded transports but found themselves trapped in a killing field with no escape route. "This is almost too easy," Hayes said as she counted the fallen alien soldiers. They keep making the same mistakes. That's the problem with rigid training, Morrison replied. It works perfectly until someone changes the rules. But even as he spoke, Morrison noticed the Zephyrian forces beginning to adapt. Squad leaders were taking more time to analyze situations before moving. Soldiers were checking for traps more carefully. Drones were scanning every piece of debris before troops approached. They're learning, Dr. Stone warned through the radio. Response times are improving and they're detecting more of our hidden sensors. Morrison had expected this development. Phase 3. Begin urban warfare protocols. Carter acknowledged the order and human teams moved deeper into the colony buildings. Instead of fighting in open spaces, they would force the aliens into close-quarters combat where superior numbers became a disadvantage. The first Zephyrian squad to enter the main commercial district walked into a carefully prepared ambush. Human defenders had rigged the buildings with explosive traps and created hidden firing positions behind false walls. As the alien soldiers advanced down the main street, the humans struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Morrison watched the engagement through remote cameras that Dr. Stone had installed throughout the colony. The Zephyrians found themselves under fire from windows, rooftops, and basement positions. When they tried to return fire, their targets disappeared into prepared escape routes. Building by building, Morrison murmured, "Make them fight for every meter." The alien soldiers pressed forward with disciplined determination, but their casualties mounted steadily. For every building they cleared, 2 more human ambush teams attacked their flanks. For every trap they detected and disarmed, 3 more waited ahead. General Vex Thor's voice suddenly boomed across the battlefield through external speakers on the Zephyrian command vehicle. "Commander Morrison, this is not honorable warfare. Face us in open battle." Morrison picked up his own communication device and broadcast his response on all frequencies. "Honor is a luxury for people who aren't fighting for their homes. We'll take survival over honor any day. You cannot win through cowardice and tricks. Watch us." The radio fell silent except for the ongoing sounds of battle. Morrison could see the frustration building among the Zephyrian forces as they struggled to adapt to human tactics. Their perfect formations kept getting broken up by unexpected attacks. Their coordinated advances kept getting disrupted by booby traps and ambushes. But Morrison also knew this phase of the battle could not last forever. The aliens had superior firepower and would eventually overwhelm human positions through sheer persistence. He needed to escalate to the next phase before his forces became too depleted. "All units prepare for tactical withdrawal," he ordered. "Move to secondary positions and prepare for Phase 4. Hayes looked at him questioningly. "We're retreating?" "We're advancing backward," Morrison corrected, "leading them deeper into our trap." As human defenders began their carefully choreographed withdrawal, the Zephyrian forces pressed forward more aggressively. They sensed victory and wanted to capitalize on their momentum. Morrison smiled as he watched the aliens advancing exactly where he wanted them. The real battle was just beginning. Morrison watched from his command bunker as alien dropships circled overhead like mechanical vultures. The ground battle had been raging for 6 hours and Zephyrian forces were finally adapting to human tactics. Their casualty reports showed progress, but not enough to win against such overwhelming numbers. "Jake, they're calling in orbital support," Hayes reported as she monitored enemy communications. "Vex Thor is ordering bombardment of suspected human positions." Morrison had expected this escalation. When conventional ground tactics failed, most military commanders resorted to overwhelming firepower from space. The alien general was following predictable patterns even in his desperation. "All units move to deep shelter positions," Morrison ordered through his communicator. "Phase 5 is beginning." Throughout the colony, human defenders disappeared into underground tunnels and reinforced bunkers that had been prepared over the past 2 days. The mining operations on New Dakota had created an extensive network of passages beneath the surface, perfect for surviving orbital bombardment. The first energy beams lanced down from space like pillars of blue fire. Buildings exploded in brilliant flashes as alien weapons turned the colonial settlement into a landscape of smoke and rubble. The bombardment continued for 20 minutes, methodically destroying every structure that might hide human defenders. Dr. Stone huddled beside Morrison in their reinforced shelter and monitored her instruments. "Surface radiation levels are spiking. They're using plasma weapons that leave residual energy signatures. How long before it's safe to move?" 2 hours minimum for the energy to dissipate. Morrison smiled grimly. Perfect. That gives us time to implement the real plan. Hayes looked confused. The real plan? What have we been doing for the past 6 hours? Buying time and gathering intelligence? Every Zephyrian unit that attacked us transmitted their positions back to their command ship. Every weapon they fired gave us data about their capabilities. Every tactic they used revealed their decision-making patterns. Dr. Stone pulled up her analysis on a portable screen. I've been tracking their communication signatures. The Zephyrians use a central artificial intelligence system to coordinate battlefield tactics. Every unit reports to regional commanders who report to the AI core. Where is this AI located? The main command ship in orbit. All tactical decisions flow through that single point. Morrison felt the pieces of his strategy falling into place. Alex, what's the status of your infiltration team? Carter's voice came through the communicator with background noise that suggested he was moving through the tunnel systems. We're in position beneath the primary landing zone. The Zephyrians established their main ground base exactly where you predicted they would. Can you reach their communication array? Negative. Too many guards and the approach is across open ground, but I have another idea. Morrison waited as Carter explained his alternative plan. The Special Operations leader had identified a weakness in the alien defensive perimeter. During the orbital bombardment, several Zephyrian transport ships had landed to evacuate wounded soldiers. One of those ships remained on the ground with minimal security. If we can capture that transport, we might be able to reach the command ship, Carter suggested. Dr. Stone looked up from her instruments. I can modify my EMP devices to work on their ship systems. If we get close enough, we can disable their defenses and technology. Hayes frowned at the tactical display. Jake, this sounds like suicide. Even if you reach the command ship, you'll be facing thousands of soldiers. Not thousands, Morrison corrected. Hundreds. Most of their forces are on the surface. The command ship will have a skeleton crew focused on coordination, not combat. It's still impossible odds. Morrison stood up and checked his equipment. Impossible odds are what humans do best. Besides, we don't need to win a conventional battle up there. We just need to reach their AI system and shut it down. Dr. Stone packed her modified EMP devices into a portable case. If we can disrupt their central command, their ground forces will lose coordination. Individual units will have to make decisions without guidance from the AI. And Zephyrian soldiers aren't trained for independent thinking, Hayes realized. They'll be paralyzed without constant orders. Morrison nodded. Carter, how long do you need to secure that transport ship? Give me 30 minutes. The radiation levels from the bombardment are keeping most of the aliens in their shelters. Do it. Dr. Stone, prepare your equipment for zero-gravity operations. Hayes, you're in command of ground operations while I'm gone. Hayes grabbed Morrison's arm. You can't seriously be planning to go up there yourself. I'm the only one who understands the complete tactical picture. If something goes wrong, I need to be there to adapt the plan. Morrison made his way through the tunnel system toward the rendezvous point where Carter's team was preparing for their assault on the transport ship. The underground passages echoed with the sounds of distant explosions as Zephyrian forces continued their systematic destruction of the surface colony. When he reached the staging area, Carter briefed him on the approach route. The alien transport sat in a clearing surrounded by debris from the bombardment. Most of the Zephyrian guards had taken shelter from residual radiation, leaving only automated sensors to watch the perimeter. The ship's cargo bay is open, Carter reported. We can be inside before their security systems detect us. Morrison studied the target through a periscope device. The Zephyrian transport was larger than he had expected, easily capable of carrying 50 soldiers and their equipment. More importantly, it was clearly designed for orbital operations. Are you sure you can fly that thing? Dr. Stone smiled. Their control systems are surprisingly similar to human designs. I've been studying the technical specifications we captured from their communication intercepts. The assault team moved out under cover of smoke and debris from the bombardment. Morrison led the way with Carter's operators providing security. They crossed the dangerous open ground in small groups, using the destroyed buildings for concealment. The Zephyrian transport's cargo bay stood open exactly as Carter had reported. Morrison could see the ship's interior lighting and hear the hum of active systems. No guards were visible, but automated turrets tracked slowly back and forth near the entrance. Dr. Stone activated her first EMP device and the defensive turrets suddenly went dark. 60 seconds before their backup systems activate, she warned. Carter's team rushed the ship and secured the cargo bay while Morrison and Dr. Stone headed for the flight controls. The interior was designed for beings larger than humans, but the basic layout was familiar enough. "I can make this work," Dr. Stone said, as she studied the alien control panel. "Give me 2 minutes to understand their interface." Morrison watched through the ship's sensors as Zephyrian ground forces began responding to the captured transport. Alien soldiers were emerging from their shelters and moving toward their position. "We need to go now," he urged. Dr. Stone's hands flew over the alien. Controls in the transport shuddered as its engines came online. "Everyone hold on. I've never flown anything this big before." The ship lifted off just as Zephyrian soldiers reached the landing zone. Energy weapons fired at the rising transport, but Dr. Stone had already engaged the ship's defensive shields. Morrison looked down at the devastated colony as they climbed toward orbit. Smoke rose from hundreds of destroyed buildings, and alien forces moved like insects through the rubble. But if his plan worked, those forces would soon be blind and leaderless. The command ship grew larger ahead of them, bristling with weapons and communication arrays. Morrison checked his equipment one final time. The real battle was about to begin. The Zephyrian command ship loomed ahead of them like a mechanical mountain floating in space. Morrison counted dozens of weapon turrets and sensor arrays covering its hull as Dr. Stone piloted their stolen transport toward the main docking bay. "They're hailing us," Dr. Stone reported as alien communications filled the cockpit with harsh electronic sounds. "I think they want authorization codes." Morrison studied the approaching docking bay and noticed something encouraging. Only a few small ships were visible inside the massive hangar. Most of the fleet's transports were either on the planet's surface or patrolling the outer system. "Can you fake the authorization?" "I'm trying to mimic the signal patterns we recorded earlier." Dr. Stone's fingers moved quickly over the alien control panel. "There, I think that did it." The command ship's docking bay opened like a vast mechanical mouth and guided them inside with tractor beams. Morrison watched through the ship's cameras as they settled onto a landing platform surrounded by alien equipment and supply containers. Carter checked his weapon and signaled his team to prepare for action. "How many hostiles do you think we're facing?" Morrison studied the docking bay through the ship's sensors. He could see only a handful of Zephyrian crew members moving between the parked vehicles. Most appeared to be technicians and support personnel rather than combat troops. Maybe 50 in this section. The real challenge will be reaching the AI core before they can organize a defense. Dr. Stone pulled up a schematic of the command ship that she had constructed from intercepted technical data. The central computer should be located in the ship's core approximately 15 levels above us. Security checkpoints? Unknown, but we have to assume they'll detect us as soon as we leave the docking bay. Morrison gathered the assault team around him and explained the mission one final time. They needed to reach the AI system that controlled all Zephyrian ground operations and disable it permanently. Speed was more important than stealth because every minute they delayed gave the aliens more time to organize resistance. "Remember, our goal is not to fight every enemy soldier on this ship. Our goal is to complete the mission and get out alive." Carter's team moved to the cargo bay door and prepared to assault the docking bay. Morrison carried Dr. Stone's EMP devices. While she focused on navigating through the alien ship's layout, the cargo door opened and they rushed into the docking bay before the alien technicians could react. Carter's operators secured the area quickly and efficiently while Morrison headed for the nearest access corridor. Alarms began sounding throughout the command ship as Zephyrian security systems detected the intruders. Morrison could hear the heavy footsteps of alien soldiers running toward their position from multiple directions. "This way," Dr. Stone called as she located an elevator that would take them toward the ship's central core. "I can override the security locks with the same techniques I used on the transport." They piled into the elevator as energy weapon fire erupted behind them. Carter's rear guard team held the docking bay while Morrison's group ascended toward their target. The elevator climbed rapidly through the massive ship's interior. "How much time do we have before they cut power to this thing?" Morrison asked. "Not long. They're already trying to override my control codes." The elevator stopped at level 12 and the doors opened to reveal a corridor filled with Zephyrian soldiers. Morrison dove to the side as energy blasts filled the elevator car with deadly radiation. Dr. Stone activated one of her EMP devices and the alien weapon suddenly went silent. Carter's operators rushed out of the elevator and engaged the confused Zephyrian soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. The aliens were larger and stronger, but they seemed disoriented by the failure of their technology. Morrison fought his way through the corridor toward a maintenance shaft that Dr. Stone had identified as a shortcut to the AI core. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of fierce combat as more alien soldiers arrived to reinforce their comrades. 3 more levels, Dr. Stone panted as they climbed through the narrow maintenance shaft. The AI core should be directly above us. They emerged into a circular chamber dominated by a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. Thousands of data cables connected the crystal to processing units throughout the room. Morrison knew immediately that they had found their target. That's it, Dr. Stone confirmed. The central AI that coordinates all their military operations. Morrison placed the remaining EMP devices around the crystalline core while Dr. Stone worked at a control panel. Can you access their tactical systems? I'm in. Jake, you need to see this. The AI isn't just coordinating ground operations. It's controlling fleet movements, supply logistics, even individual soldier behavior. Morrison looked at the data streams flowing across Dr. Stone's screen. Every Zephyrian unit in the entire star system was receiving constant instructions from this single artificial intelligence. Without it, their perfect military machine would collapse. How long to shut it down permanently? I need to plant a logic virus in their core programming. 5 minutes minimum. Explosions echoed through the ship as Zephyrian forces fought to reach the AI chamber. Morrison knew Carter's team could not hold them off much longer against such overwhelming numbers. Do what you need to do. I'll handle the door. Morrison positioned himself at the chamber entrance and checked his remaining ammunition. Through the corridor, he could see alien soldiers advancing in organized formations. Their golden eyes burned with determination as they fought to protect their most vital system. The first wave of Zephyrian troops reached the AI chamber, and Morrison met them with concentrated weapon fire. The narrow doorway worked to his advantage, forcing the aliens to attack in small groups rather than using their numerical superiority. 2 more minutes. Dr. Stone called from the control panel. Morrison's weapon overheated and he switched to his backup pistol. The alien soldiers pressed forward relentlessly, stepping over their fallen comrades to continue the assault. Morrison knew he could not hold them much longer. Done, Dr. Stone announced. The virus is uploading now. The crystalline AI core suddenly flickered and went dark. Throughout the command ship, emergency lighting activated as primary systems began failing. Morrison could hear confusion spreading among the Zephyrian soldiers as their coordinated advance collapsed into chaos. What's happening to them? Dr. Stone asked as she watched alien troops milling around aimlessly in the corridor. They're thinking for themselves for the first time in their lives, Morrison replied, and they don't know how. Without the AI to provide constant guidance, individual Zephyrian soldiers found themselves paralyzed by uncertainty. They had been trained to follow orders, not to make independent decisions in rapidly changing situations. Morrison activated his communicator and contacted Hayes on the planet's surface. Lisa, how are things down there? Jake, it's incredible. The aliens just stopped fighting. They're standing around looking confused. Some groups are retreating to their landing zones. Morrison smiled as he watched Zephyrian soldiers in the corridor arguing among themselves about what to do next. Their perfect discipline had become a crippling weakness when their central command disappeared. General Vexthor's voice suddenly echoed through the ship's communication system. Commander Morrison, I know you are responsible for this. Face me in honorable combat. Morrison found a working communication panel and responded, General, I'll meet you in the main docking bay. Just you and me. When Morrison reached the docking bay, he found Vexthor waiting alone beside the captured transport. The alien general had removed his armor and carried only a ceremonial blade. His golden eyes showed a mixture of rage and grudging respect. You have defeated my forces through trickery and deception, Vexthor said, but you are still only one human. Morrison drew his combat knife and faced the towering alien warrior. That's all it takes. They circled each other in the empty docking bay while around them the mighty Zephyrian fleet drifted powerless in space. Morrison was smaller and weaker than his opponent, but he was fighting for his home while Vexthor was fighting for his pride. The battle was brief and decisive. Morrison used speed and tactics to overcome the alien's superior strength, just as humanity had used ingenuity to overcome the Zephyrian Empire's superior numbers. As Vexthor fell, Morrison helped him to his feet. Your warriors fought bravely, General. The problem was never with your soldiers. The problem was with your strategy. Explain. Morrison gestured toward the disabled command ship around them. You saw 1,000,000 soldiers as strength. We saw 1,000,000 targets as opportunity. You fought as one mind controlling many bodies. We fought as many minds working toward one goal. Vexthor nodded slowly. Perhaps there is wisdom in your chaos. 6 months later, Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Dakota's rebuilt defense center and watched human ships patrolling the system. The Zephyrian Empire had withdrawn from human space after news of their defeat spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien civilizations had taken notice. Humanity's reputation for tactical adaptability and stubborn resistance had grown beyond all proportion to their actual military strength. Lisa Hayes joined him at the window and smiled. The latest intelligence reports say 3 different alien empires have canceled their expansion plans after studying what happened HO.